Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Coriander Colors trunk show planned for you. Last week I shared all about the fabrics in Coriander Colors, and today it's all about the quilts. There is a brand new cat quilt you'll be excited to see. I have a new Barnstar quilt that I can't wait to share with you, plus so many more fun quilts to share. So you are going to want to stick around. First up, we have Positively Charming. This quilt is a charm pack friendly quilt. It finishes at 51 inches by 59.5 inches square, and it would be a beginner to intermediate level pattern. It's a fairly simple one to piece, and we are going to take this one down so that you can see it in a little bit more detail. This is what Positively Charming looks like up close. If you missed the fabric show for the Coriander Colors line of fabric, I will have that linked below so that you can take a look at those fabrics in more detail. The backgrounds of all of my new quilts for this fabric line are from my Coriander Seeds line of fabric. Coriander Seeds is my line of basic white on white that is always in quilt shops, so you can always purchase these white on white fabrics. This particular one is called Lacy Polka Dot, and it is a medium scale polka dot print. For the backing on this quilt, I used a 108-inch wide Compositions fabric by Basic Gray. If I could have, I would have backed all of these new quilts in this black and white polka dot because I think it works so well for backings on all of these, but I unfortunately ran out of that particular fabric, so I had to make do with what I had on hand. For the binding, I used the black and white stripe from Coriander Colors, another favorite of mine. I used it for binding on all but one of my new quilts. I just thought it perfectly accented these quilts. Let me slide it over so you can see the edge here. I just think that's so pretty. Just adds such a nice touch to the perimeter of your quilt. Now the quilting on this quilt is called Rainy Day. It's by Mistletoe Quilting Company, and it is this circle print with almost a little seedling flower, orange peel sort of motif in the center of each of those circles. And that was a new quilting design that we tried. David Hurd of Quilting by David did the quilting on all of these quilts, and I think they turned out so pretty. But this, I think, is a beautiful quilting design for this quilt. It has a lot of negative space, and so you really do get to see that quilting pattern very nicely across this quilt. Now, behind me, we have Cakery. This is a layer cake friendly quilt, and it finishes at 65 by 65 inches square. Again, I used the white on white print from Coriander Seeds. This is the text print from that line, and I think it adds such a pretty touch. That print is especially interesting. You don't very often see text prints in a white on white, and so I was excited to mix it in with my Coriander Colors line of fabric. And you'll see what that looks like up close. Here is Cakery up close. The quilting design on this is quickly becoming one of my favorites. This is called Circles Nested. It's by Julie Hurt. And David always does such a great job with this quilting motif. We've used this several times, and I have another quilt I'm going to be showing you in the very near future that uses this same design again. Changing the scale on this is a lot of fun too. We've done it a little bit smaller this time. These circles are about the size of a dime. We've done it quarter sized, and the next quilt I have to show you, they're even a little bit bigger. So it's a really fun quilting design to play around with. The centers on these blocks are all in the black prints, the black and white prints from Coriander Colors, which was fun to frame those centers out with all of those colorful prints. I love the way that looks. This is another beginner to intermediate level pattern, so an easier one to piece. The backing is the same as what you just saw, and I would say the same thing for this quilt. If I had had the black and white polka dot, this one right here, that would have been my pick to back this quilt with. And then the black and white stripe is just perfect for that edge. The white on white, as I said, is the text, and it's the same thing that I used for the border. Let me slide this down just a little bit so you can see the edge of the quilt there and see how that border looks. There it is. So just a little bit of a border around the perimeter of this quilt, framing out all of those colorful prints. And that is what cakery looks like. We'll take a look behind me. I have apricot jelly hanging up. Now, some of you might be familiar with this quilt. We saw it first in the On a Roll book. It's a Moda All-Stars book. So if you have this book, you already have this pattern. But with this line, I decided to release it as a standalone pattern. So you can purchase just the pattern if you would like to on its own without having to purchase the book. Now, all of my new patterns are in my Etsy shop. I have them available in both paper and PDF formats, so you can purchase whichever works best for you. Apricot jelly is, as the name implies, a jelly roll quilt. It finishes at 68 by 84, and just a colorful mix of fabrics in this bright and happy quilt. Let's take this down because the quilting on this one is a lot of fun too. And this is what apricot jelly looks like up close. The quilting on this quilt is called River Rocks, and you can see, as the name implies, it looks like river rocks stacked across the quilt top. For the sashing, we used the gray X print from Coriander Colors. The background is the pin dot from Coriander Seeds. And for the backing, we used that same gray X print, which I think works really well because of the sashing of this quilt. But this is still a favorite of mine, and I think that would be another great choice for the backing on this quilt. The stripe, that black and white, finishes this quilt so nicely for the binding. And that is a look up close at the apricot jelly quilt. Now, hanging behind me, we have Purry Stars. This one you got a little bit of a peek at last fall in the form of a t-shirt that I designed, the Cats and Quilts t-shirt. I have it now in sweatshirt form for the winter. So some of you guessed that there might be a quilt pattern coming soon. And if you thought that might be the case, you were right. This is Purry Stars. It is a cat take of the Woolly Stars sheep quilt. And this was a lot of fun, and it worked so well for some of the prints in Coriander Colors. This quilt size is 69 by 84, so almost the same size as apricot jelly, just 1 inch difference there. And wait until you see the quilting on this one. It's so cool. This is what the cats look like up closely. And if you look at that quilting, they are little clam cats, which I think is so perfect. I love that it is a cat, but it's not super novelty. It just is a little bit whimsical. This design is part of a bundle offered by the Long Arm League, and the bundle is called the Clamor Bundle. As always, I have all of these quilting designs linked in the description box below, so if any of them catch your fancy for any of the quilts you're seeing today, or maybe you have a quilt you're sending off to your long armor that they would work perfectly for, you will have that information available to you. I'm going to slide us over to the edge so you can see that binding. Of course, the black stripe works beautifully on this quilt, and the black and white polka dot finally made its way into a quilt. I used just about all of it for this quilt, and I have one more quilt that you're going to see that includes this as the backing as well. For the background on this quilt, it is the white on white X print. So it's the same print as what you see here in the sashing in green, but it's the white on white from Coriander Seeds. So now you have seen this quilt in one version, but we made two. So back behind me, I have another version of this same quilt pattern. This quilt is made using the eyelet fabrics by Joanna of Fig Tree & Co. And I love this one. When I was designing this pattern, I had initially thought that I was going to first make it in these fabrics. It's what I pictured this quilt being made in. And then when I decided to do the Coriander Colors line of fabric, this was a little bit of a surprise fabric line this past summer. And so when I was working on patterns for this, I thought, oh, hey, that cat quilt that you were thinking about would work great for Coriander Colors. So I ended up making it first in Coriander Colors, but then we had to also make it in my original plan for this quilt pattern. And I think it looks so pretty. I love these fabrics of Joanna's. If you have not seen them yet, you'll want to check them out because they're so pretty. Just wait until you see them up close. And here is what this version of the quilt looks like. For the background, it is the vines print from Coriander Seeds. The rest of the fabrics are from the Eyelet collection by Joanna of Fig Tree & Co., with the exception of the binding fabric, which is a gingham from my Beautiful Day line of fabric. For the backing, I used a 108-inch wide print from the Ombre Confetti line by V&Co. And that beautiful quilting design that you see is called Edgewood. And I think that is so pretty. I love the way this one turned out. Just adorable. And the last quilt I have to share with you today is another Barnstar quilt. This is Barnstar 7. It is the 7th in my line of Barnstar quilt patterns. These quilt patterns are all 40 inches square. You can see a Barnstar 6 hanging back behind in our backdrop right here. But this is Barnstar 7. It's a charm pack friendly quilt, and it is a pretty quick, simple one to piece. I will show you this one up close as well. Here is what this Barnstar 7 looks like up close. It is just a happy riot of color. There's that black and white polka dot for the border. It frames this out so beautifully. The quilting design is called Heidi's Orange Peel. The background fabric is the Ditzy print from Coriander Seeds, and the backing fabric is also that black and white polka dot. I just love this for the backings on this quilt. The binding, this is the one I did not use that stripe for, and it is the Rings fabric from Coriander Colors. And that is a look at what this Barnstar looks like. Now, as I said earlier, this is a 40-inch square quilt, making it perfect for baby quilts. It also is the same size as the other Barnstar quilts I've released previously. Barnstars 1 through 6 and now 7 are all 40 inches square, which means that you could take 4 of them and put them together into one larger 80-inch square quilt. I always like to mention that as an option because it's kind of a fun thing to know that you can do that. I hope you have really enjoyed this look at the Coriander Colors quilts. I've typed up a blog post over on my website, corianderquilts.com, if you want to see more photos of these quilts. We had such a great time at that photo shoot. The photos turned out beautifully, and so I'd love if you'd take a peek at those. Coriander Colors fabrics are in quilt shops in June of this year, and if you would like to see them in your favorite quilt shop, now is the time to ask your quilt shops to order those so that they are shipped to them when they release in June. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I will catch you again next time.